United States of America present count 1 of the indictment, that all the defendants participated as organizers or accomplices in a common plan or conspiracy to commit crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. The aims of this...
In May 1945, after years of unimaginable destruction, Nazi Germany surrendered unconditionally. The war in Europe was over, but the scars it left on the world would take decades to heal. As the world stood at an ideological crossroads, a question arose. How could the world bring justice to the leaders responsible for the devastation? The Nuremberg trials, held between 1945 and 1946, would offer an answer. They would be more than a trial for the crimes of Nazi Germany. They would become the cornerstone of international justice and the global commitment to human rights. The Allies' victory in World War II had come at a great cost, and in the aftermath of the war, nations were grappling with how to rebuild, how to seek retribution, but also how to ensure that such horrors would never be repeated. The trials, taking place in the very heart of Nazi power, Nuremberg, Germany, represented the conception of individual responsibility for the crimes carried out and the reconstruction of international justice itself. On November 20th, 1945, the Nuremberg trials began. They were conducted by the Allied powers, the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, and France, under the authority of the International Military Tribunal, established to bring war criminals to justice. The trials were unprecedented. For the first time, leaders were held accountable not just for waging war, but for crimes against humanity. This marked a critical shift. No longer would the defense of a nation's collective guilt absolve individuals of responsibility. The defense of just following orders was deemed insufficient, establishing a new universal principle that every individual, regardless of their rank or position, bears personal responsibility for their actions. The Nuremberg Charter outlined the framework for the trials, defining the types of crimes committed as crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. Among these three categories, one stood above the rest in its historical significance. It was this category that held the Nazi leadership accountable for the most horrific and systematic atrocities ever witnessed. These charges of crimes against humanity went beyond traditional concepts of international law. They directly addressed the industrial-scale genocide that Nazi Germany had orchestrated. The Holocaust was central to these charges brought against them. It was understood that the mass murder of over 6 million Jewish men, women, and children was not a byproduct of war. It was a deliberate, calculated policy designed to annihilate an entire group of these civilians. "24 high-ranking Nazi officials faced justice, charged with conducting atrocities during the Holocaust. Among them were Hermann Göring, Rudolf Hess, Albert Speer, and many others. Their trials exposed the systematic nature of Nazi crimes, providing undeniable evidence to the world of the actions committed against minorities in German territory. These proceedings were not just trials of the individuals, but an indictment of the ideology of hatred and violence that had spread throughout the war." But how had such a vast system of violence been possible? The trials revealed that these crimes were not just the result of a few ruthless individuals, but of an entire bureaucratic and military machine. The Nazi state functioned through the willing participation of thousands, from government officials to military leaders to ordinary citizens who became complicit in carrying out genocide and repression. The idea that only Hitler and his closest advisors were responsible quickly crumbled under the weight of the evidence produced by the prosecution and various testimonies. This further reaffirmed the idea that these crimes were not random acts of cruelty, but a highly organized and systematic effort to exterminate millions of civilians. The prosecution presented over 3,000 tons of evidence, a staggering amount that included film footage, photographs, official Nazi records, and survivor testimonies. Some of the most damning pieces of evidence, including detailed reports and transport lists, came directly from the Nazis themselves. These records were gathered from concentration camps and ghettos, leaving no doubt about the scale and intent of Nazi crimes. Perhaps the most chilling pieces of evidence were the liberation films, footage captured by Allied forces as they entered concentration camps, showing skeletal prisoners, mass graves, and gas chambers. For many, this was the first time the full horror of the Holocaust was revealed to the world. This evidence not only secured convictions of the accused, but also served as a reminder of the consequences of unchecked power and how wide-reaching these consequences can be. While the prosecution's case was overwhelming, the trials also emphasized fairness. Defendants were granted legal counsel and the opportunity to defend themselves. This commitment to due process was another powerful statement. Even those accused of the most heinous crimes are still entitled to fairness throughout the legal process. This created a contrast to the regime the accused individuals had served, where fairness and rights were systematically denied to people. This uniform and fair process highlighted the commitment of the Allies to upholding the principles the Nazis had fully violated during the war. In the end, 12 defendants were sentenced to death, 3 acquitted, and the rest received prison terms. These outcomes were not just about retribution, they were about setting a universal precedent. The Nuremberg trials laid the groundwork for modern international law, including the establishment of the International Criminal Court and the Geneva Conventions. They reaffirmed the idea that justice is essential for global peace.
In the history of law, the Nuremberg trials are for the first time an attempt to create an international legal structure that would put people on trials on the basis of crimes against war, crimes against peace, and crimes against humanity. Okay? So crimes, war crimes, and then crimes against peace and crimes against humanity are considered to be the innovation, the great innovation of the Nuremberg trials. Yeah?
The legacy of Nuremberg is visible in the institutions and legal frameworks it inspired. The world recognized that justice could not be limited to the punishment of those responsible for past atrocities. It had to serve as the foundation for preventing future crimes as well. With the devastation of World War II still fresh in the minds of civilians and politicians, world leaders saw an urgent need to create a legal structure that would prevent history from repeating itself. The trials laid the foundation for the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of the Crime of Genocide, held by the United Nations General Assembly in 1948. Known as the Genocide Convention, this pivotal event represented the international community's resolve to prevent atrocities similar to the Holocaust from ever happening again. It provided the first legal definition of genocide and classified it as an international crime, with 153 nations recognizing its significance. The convention has since been invoked in various tragic events, such as the Rwandan genocide, where approximately 1 million ethnic Tutsi and moderate Hutu people were brutally killed, while the world, including the United Nations, largely remained passive. Similarly, it was also applied during the Bosnian genocide, where the Serb army massacred around 40,000 Bosnians. The legal precedents established by the Nuremberg trials played a crucial role in ensuring that the perpetrators of these heinous crimes after World War II were brought to justice. One of the most significant milestones in the development of human rights law, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, also acted as a response to the atrocities exposed by the Nuremberg trials. The Declaration outlines a wide-ranging set of principles, including the right to life, liberty, and security of person, freedom from torture and inhumane treatment, the right to a fair trial, freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, and the right to work, education, and participation in cultural life. These principles serve as a foundation for international human rights law, influencing countless treaties, national constitutions, and movements for equality and security of economic, social, and cultural rights worldwide. The principles of Nuremberg additionally remind us that justice is not confined to courtrooms. It lives in the efforts of people to uphold these rights daily. From advancing gender equality to fighting modern-day discrimination, the pursuit of justice demands constant action in society. The trials challenged us to confront injustice and to protect the vulnerable. They also demonstrated that accountability is not just about punishing the guilty, it's about acknowledging our shared humanity and commitment to a just world. The Nuremberg trials did not eliminate every possibility of injustice, nor could they erase the effects of the Nazi crimes. Yet they still ignited a global commitment to protecting our humanity. Their legacy challenges us still to remember that it is our responsibility to uphold human rights, no matter the hostility or resistance that we may face.